Character is a big part of what we're looking for, kind of integrity and ownership of responsibility, right? These are some of the key traits.
Our biggest piece is blankets. Blankets, blankets, blankets. I should buy stock in moving blankets.
If you're doing a quality job, that's generally not going to happen in an hour, and you're not going to have an educated customer that knows how to use the system.
The worst dysfunction is when you have your technicians hate your salespeople and your admins hate your salespeople.
We are your trusted security provider, and we've been in business for well over 30 years. But it's like you can say those words and you can post those words, but you have to act on it.
I've learned that the worst problem is a problem I don't know about. First of all, I want to welcome everybody to the Coffee Break with Jake Call. We do this every Friday at 11 a.m. I'm so glad to see so many of you here, and really excited about today's call. On today's call, we're going to be talking about setting your company apart with a high level of professionalism. I think that pro installation is the best option for security systems, particularly monitored security systems. But I think sometimes we could talk about those standards. What does it mean to be a professional as it relates to sales, installation, and then service after the install? And so I'm really glad to have a group of folks on who I know have a very high level of professionalism and have some really great folks on their team. And what I'd like to do is, first of all, if you have any salespeople on your team, would you please do me a favor and raise your hand for me? I always say I'm a son of a salesman. My dad, and starting in the alarm industry, he was a door-to-door alarm salesman. I know that door-to-door gets a really bad rap these days, but I have to tell you, it can be done honestly and ethically and effectively, and I've seen that done. But I've developed a real appreciation for salespeople, and particularly what I would consider to be professional salespeople that have a process, salespeople that have a way that they do sales. But I'm going to call on John Tanner first, and John, yeah, and I'm going to jump to you, Sarah, as well. But John, I'd like to ask you a little bit about American Alarm. Tell us where you're calling in from. Just give us a quick synopsis on American for those of you that don't know. And then I'd love to understand how many salespeople you guys have out in the field.
Oh, yeah, great. Good morning, Jake. I haven't been on many of these meetings over the last months, and I've really missed kind of the greater community here. So it's great to be able to make this one. My name's John Tanner. I'm Vice President of Operations for American Alarm and Communications, or SDN. I think listed last year in 19th or 20th on the SDN Top 100. We have 8 physical locations across 4 states, about 300 employees, and I don't know, thousands and thousands and thousands of customers. And right now we have in our sales department, about 35, 36 people.
So 35, 36 people. How does American onboard those salespeople? Let me this up. I alluded to the fact that door-to-door salespeople, and I think sometimes with a broad brush, just security salespeople have had somewhat of a negative reputation. People kind of look at security system salespeople with what's the word?
Trepidation.
Yeah, there's a good word. I was trying to think of a nice way to say it. Trepidation. And so, my dad is in the business. He actually texted me Monday night and he said, "Jake, I'm so frustrated. There's some Vivint guys out knocking our neighborhoods and telling us that we are telling our customers that we're out of business, that they're there to take over the alarm system. Apparently, he got this sales rep on the phone. Things escalated. My mom is texting me, "Hey, talk dad down. He's gonna get this guy fired." And I texted mom back and I said, "You know what, mom? I think this guy deserves everything he's gonna get." So I'm not too worried about it. But I use that story as an example of the importance of maintaining a level of professionalism and standards and integrity with your salespeople, so that those types of scenarios don't happen. John, before we get into the training for the salespeople, can you talk to us about what your team looks for when you're hiring salespeople? Would you consider do you hire professional salespeople? Do you hire for certain personality types? What is it that your team looks for when you're hiring salespeople?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably important to clarify that, my role in the company doesn't exist without sales, but I don't oversee or run sales, but I can speak to it because I've been with the company for almost 18 years. I think character is a big part of what we're looking for, kind of integrity, and ownership of responsibility, right? These are some of the key traits. And so we have an assessment profile that any employee takes before they come to work with us. It's a pretty standard profile and it kind of gives a personality picture in some regards. It's not the only measurement, but it's certainly a tool that we use to kind of help for questions that we might want to ask during the interview process. I think for us, we're more of a carriage business in the sense that we're doing kind of larger installations. We're not really in any kind of what might be considered a volume space. So we're looking for folks that are really more in tune with kind of guiding the customer on their selection process. Those can take longer to close. And so consistency and methodology are important for us. We get a variety of folks. And in fact, more recently, believe it or not, just because of the size of the company, we are finding more internal employees wanting to move into the role of sales, right? They've either been an installer and they like the environment, they may be on the customer service side and they like the interaction. And in those cases, we have a 1-year process where we slowly immerse those folks in the sales process while they continue to take on kind of their main role within the company. And then they slowly over time transition into a full role with a mentoring partner, one of the senior folks kind of helping them learn the day-to-day basics, paperwork, things like that. That's been a big help for us. Additionally, although we've had it for a few years, we've been to revamping it a little bit inside sales. And we find that that's a great training ground for customer service in the sense that they get accustomed to asking and buying questions, accustomed with rejection, the ability to follow up, maintain communication. So these are all areas that we'd like to really kind of focus on.
So, John, one of the questions I get from some of the small businesses that we deal with, questions related to pricing and packages. I understand that most of the installs that you guys are doing today they're not the cookie cutter type installs. They're custom, but I imagine you still have standards, right? So how does if a salesperson wants to go out and quote a job, custom job, what systems are in place to get them information in terms of, hey, what products do we sell, right? So you don't have a salesperson out there selling stuff that your technicians aren't trained on or that you don't offer. How does a salesperson that goes out in the field, where do they access that information, that pricing?
And so we use a product called WeSuite, and we've been using it for, I don't know, I think 15 years, quite some time. That helps us kind of define for our newer reps. They call them packages. Some people might call them kits. And we can develop these inside the quoting software that come with labor standards, how many hours need to be included with this particular package, how many devices. And for most of our newer reps, this is a very easy way for them to pick a standard package that would include door and window contacts, interior protection, And more importantly, because we really lead with this, is fire protection. Life safety was a cornerstone for our founder, Dick Sampson, and something that is ingrained in our DNA as a business. We're more interested in selling life safety at that level than even security in some respects. But these packages or kits are very helpful and useful to kind of guide newer reps towards the right set of tools to make the right decisions for the customer. Additionally, we have controls within that software that allow us to throttle what can go to a customer before it gets two layers of review, a financial review and a technical review. So we have the ability to clamp down where everything has to go through both, or if you're shown to be a responsible, seasoned veteran who's understanding it, we could open the throttle up and more of it can pass through without that kind of front end.
Yeah, I think that's actually, we talk about the frustration between technicians and salespeople. Oftentimes we kind of see this dysfunction within companies that, the technicians are frustrated that the salespeople have sold things that don't work together, forgot certain parts that they needed to make it work, had totally unrealistic expectations of how they were going to run that wire to that spot. And so it's interesting to kind of look at those safeguards that you have in place to help prevent that. When you have a lot of the folks that ask me about hiring salespeople or hiring additional salespeople, I see this progression most often. Most often, I see a business owner that's doing the sales, and they may be doing installations as well. And then they realize, hey, I need somebody else to do sales. And they hire somebody, but they still expect that person to come to them for quoting. So it's basically like they have somebody that's out there that they've said, hey, I want to take this off my plate. I need somebody to go run sales calls. I want my evenings back. I don't want to have to go out and run appointments on Saturdays. I want a salesperson. But then we see a lot of times it's kind of they hire that person and they don't give them those tools, even just simple things like price lists, or everything has to go through them for approval, not just like a final check before install. And so for the folks on the call that are thinking about, hey, how do I scale up my sales team? I want to encourage you to look at setting standards for products. Number one, like, hey, these are the products that we sell so that you don't end up with a salesperson that's out chasing all kinds of random things and things that you may not be capable of installing. And number two, setting standards on pricing. That could just be a price list. It doesn't, WeSuite and the software that's out there it's awesome. It's incredible what you can do with the right software. But at the very least, just having a price list can empower your salespeople to go out there and sell some stuff without having to, call in every time for a manager approval on a price. John, did you want to add something to that?
I did. I think for the one area that we found the most success, right? The ones that come in, really develop and can then go out on their own and produce viable installations profitably is through that kind of mentor program. And I think to scale that to somebody's maybe a small business, maybe you've got a handful of employees, that role you described, right? Where they're doing install and selling, right? I think hiring somebody and having them kind of accompany you and follow you and handle all the paperwork aspects, handle all that time consuming documentation that can be done by just about anybody. And it's less about the developed skill and kind of relationship building that's necessary for good sales. But if they're with you, they have the ability to see, learn, and understand, and they get all this extra benefit of taking on all this administrative function that is probably more often than not the real reason somebody doesn't want to kind of they're multi-role individual. They love selling and they love installing, but it's all the admin stuff that kind of drags them down. So if they can build that support piece in a pretty short amount of time, you can develop somebody that's very competent that can go out and do reasonably scaled projects with reasonable oversight. And it's very successful.
Hey, I want to call on, thank you for that, John. I want to call on Gage. Gage, we've been connected now for years, and I know that you have a lot of experience in commercial system sales, and having worked for more than one commercial security systems integrator, can you speak to what you found to help you the most as a sales rep out in the field? What tools did you really appreciate? And without naming names, maybe like what challenges did you have with with a company that might have not had those tools? Are you able to speak to that?
When I first got into the industry, I was coming out of the military and I didn't know anything about security whatsoever. And so I was just fresh new blood for getting into it. And I worked for a company that had a niche software product built for themselves to sell upon. They kind of kept things inside of a box, but what they had was packages set up. And so, being able to sell like that as really at any point as being a sales rep, when you have this type of packages set up where you can get an understanding of, hey, here's the parent item and here's all these accessories and labor that has to be included with it, it does enable you to kind of get a better understanding of how products work faster, why those things are important. And I also was just a part of a group that, I had to go along with technicians to all the jobs that I sold in the first year. And I mean, I was installing some stuff with them. So they were just getting my hands dirty with it. And I advanced pretty fast with my understanding of technology, and it got me more interested in it because I had to do that. So those, I think, having those controls behind it, kind of like what John said, it really does help people out, because if you can say, hey, like, we're going to be inside of this box and, this is what you can sell. And here's the reasoning behind it. It allows me as a sales rep to go out and be like, I know what I need to sell and I know that this is what I'm selling. And it just allows me to perfect that. Now, on the opposite end of it, I've also used other softwares that are a little bit more. There's a lot that goes on in some softwares. There's sometimes there's just so much stuff, and you get left to the wild to try to figure those types of things out. And I find that when there's not some type of package set up inside of there, and unless you have like, systems integration background, you're kind of putting an entire proposal together from scratch, from the bottom up. And if you don't know how that works, you're set up for failure. Luckily for me, I could figure that out, but it can be very, very tough trying to figure that out on your own as a sales rep.
Yeah, so I think I think kind of going through what John's talked about and what Gage has talked about here, and just to kind of recap this from a sales perspective. Number one, having standards in place, having a system, regardless of what that system is, right? But a system, and as Gage would recommend here, a system that you might be trained on or is, easy to use, helps empower salespeople. And then I think this mentorship that John talks about and Gage talks about, getting the salesperson actually out there in the field. Number one, with the salesperson, a capable salesperson, getting them to dial in the paperwork. I can tell you, paperwork is probably, we talk about technicians and salespeople and the frustration that can happen there. The worst dysfunction is when you have your technicians hate your salespeople and your admins hate your salespeople, because salespeople that turn in paperwork that's incorrect every time. There's some admin in the office that's like banging his or her head against the wall because they're like, how do you do this? It's the same paperwork every time. It's the same places we need signatures, the same places we need initials. You never fill in this, total here where we need it. You always forget the 3-day right of rescission, whatever it is, right? That ability just to get the paperwork right is something that just takes practice, and having somebody there from the very beginning to instill in them good habits helps eliminate some of that dysfunction that happens with sales. Because the worst is the guy that's the worst with paperwork is probably also a really good sales rep. So like nobody wants to fire him because he's a rock star and he's so good. But man, if he would just slow down, hire that guy an assistant, get somebody to roll with him to do the paperwork, because he can sell anything to anyone, but he's never going to cross the T's and dot the I's. So really good notes on that with sales. For those of you that have technicians, because I want to shift, like we've sold it, and all of this to say, when you're able to capably, competently write up a proposal for a customer, that makes you look professional, right? When you can sit down with a customer, assess their needs, quickly put together the equipment that they need, the packages, the pricing, to have some system to send them a proposal, even if low tech, even if that is a proposal that you're writing up right there with them, laying everything out, having them sign off on it. That's the lowest tech version of this, but it's clear. They understand it. They feel like you know what you're doing. They feel like they know what they're getting. A high end of that, you have a software package that's putting together a really beautiful proposal. If you don't close it at the time of the first initial visit, you're getting notifications when they open it. You're sending DocuSigns through it. Really professional, really sharp, right? But get those processes in place. Now, after the sale, after you've wowed them with an incredible presentation, they've signed up on it, they're excited for you to go out there. It's time to install this equipment. For those of you that have installers out in the field, if you have technicians in the field, would you please go ahead and raise your hand for me? This is something for me that I hired a plumber to come to the house, and this dude walks into my house. Plumbing is a hard job. Okay, like it's a hard job. But this dude stomps through my house in dirty boots. Really just, I mean, I don't know if the first few jobs were hard or if he hadn't changed his shirt in a few days. This dude was not buttoned up. And again, I'm throwing in there, plumbing is a really hard job. So like, I don't want anybody to think I'm judging this guy too hard. But my perception is, hey, this guy's in plumbing. His boots are, I hope it's mud, right? Like, because you don't know. You don't know. But now it's all over the house. AJ, I'm going to call on you. I'm curious, what standards do you have for your technician? AJ, you're on mute. But AJ, what standards do you have for your technicians to maybe not stomp through the house in muddy boots, maybe to have clean shirts? And I don't know. I assume you have these standards. Talk to me about it. Like, how do you maintain professionalism with your technicians?
So our biggest piece is blankets, 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 blankets. I should buy stock in moving blankets because I'm constantly replacing them. We're getting the technicians more. To me, between the booties and I tell the guys either way, you can take your shoes off or you can put booties on because some guys don't like to put the booties on. Others would rather kick their shoes off. It doesn't really matter to me whether you're using booties or kicking your shoes off, but just one of those two. And then the next thing is blankets, right? So the first thing you should do when you come in the house is take that blanket and lay it out. And then that's where your parts go. Because at that point, you're showing the client that you care, right? That you're not just bringing in a truckload of parts and throwing it on the floor and like, okay, away we go. And same thing like in the panel room, right? Where you're working on your panel, you lay a blanket out. So then when you're trimming wires, that kind of stuff, it lands on the blanket. At the end of the job, you fold the blanket up, right, with all the trash and everything in it. And there's a lot less mess to clean up. And so I feel like it's those, I mean, it's not a hard thing to go to Home Depot and pick up 15 blankets and hey, here's 5 blankets to throw in your van. And then we provide the Milwaukee, the little 12-volt vacuum pack. Between those 3 things, we can keep a job site pretty clean.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. For those who, I assume everybody on here is in our Facebook group, Burglar Alarms Online. If you're not, we'd love to have you join. I brought up this topic in the group and I was really shocked. Like some of the responses were really kind of bizarre. Like people are like, well, if they don't like my boots, they can go to hell. Like, I don't know, like it was a weird, strange response. Like I really didn't get it. But I also think that there's some folks that don't have the same level of professionalism as other companies, right? Like, and they may think, hey, this is cool. I can be a technician and I don't need to do these things. I just need to know how to, wire up a panel, install sensors, whatever the case may be. Those little things like wearing booties, like putting blankets down, those aren't technical. Those aren't technical things. Those are just professional, like good practices. Now, how about like soft skills, AJ? Like, I think Tim Wall got in a lot of hot water a few years back years back, I guess. He mentioned something about his daughter being, it was at like a meeting, and he'd said something about his daughters being more capable of doing installations than some technicians. But his point, and he caught some flack, but I don't know that it was, I really don't think it was fair. I think what he was talking to about, I think what he was speaking to was that his daughters had really good soft skills, good people skills. And I think this is an underappreciated skill set in technicians, is it's not just being technically competent, it's not just being the guy that can troubleshoot a ground fault, it's being pleasant and professional with a customer so that they don't feel, quite frankly, uncomfortable, especially when we're talking about residential installations. I'm going to jump to John Tanner on this. John, talk to us about soft skills with technicians.
I'll be honest with you, Jake, this is probably one of the single most important pieces when it comes to almost every employee you want, right? But even more so for the technicians. In most cases, if you do everything correctly, you're using, great equipment, your installation is phenomenal, the customer's properly trained, you might not send a tech back out to that property for years. Do you want that to be the last impression that customer has of your company? Like, you have to ask yourself that when you're doing an interview and you're looking at the individual. And I'm not talking about, whether they have facial hair or tattoos or whatever. I'm talking about, what is your feeling when you're talking to these folks? Because those soft skills, you can train for them, but will they be used is really the bigger question, right? You can give a technician a box of booties and say, put these on your feet, please, when you go to the house. But do they actually put them on their feet when they go to the house? You have to identify that willingness in the employee to participate in the value statement. And those soft skills, those social skills are critical. And you know it, right? You know those techs that have it because they get, we call them VOCs, voice of the customers. Like, they just get them. It reminds me of, I'm going to date myself here, Welcome Back, Kotter, where, Dr. Epstein's mother's doctor, right? Like, you're like, are you handing these notes to these customers? Because no way you're getting this many VOCs from a customer, but they're just, it's their personality. And if you can't identify that, if it doesn't feel right, chances are it's going to be a challenge.
I remember my dad had this tech that was, he was that guy. This guy would get all of the positive feedback. And the problem was, I say problem, the problem was this guy would take longer on every job than anybody else, right? And so I think that there are some folks that are so operationally focused. I think of some folks that, really look so closely at metrics in terms of, hey, how long does it take somebody to do a job, that they might actually miss those notes, right? Like, you could actually take a technician that's awesome, and I say awesome in terms of delighting the customer. I mean, just making an incredible positive impression on the customer, but taking on average an hour longer to do the same install as any of the other techs, and you may reward the wrong things. And so, like, I just want to point this out as John talks about, specifically about like those voice of customer notes, the 5-star reviews, people saying, hey, AJ's a rock star. You really want to make sure that you're counting that. Like, you want to make sure that there's some way to measure it, because you could end up giving the wrong guy the raise or the accolades, the guy that's just zipping. You're like, man, this guy's so good, but maybe that guy leaves a mess. Maybe that guy doesn't stop to train the customer. Maybe that guy is just going so fast that your customer feels like their head is spinning and they don't know what happened. And the next thing you know, he's out the door. John, how do you balance that? Like, because it is important for them to get the job done, but you really want the happy customers too. So how do you balance it?
So let me ask you a question. Take away the root reason why most of us are in this industry, right? Which is, we love protecting lives and families and all of those things. This is a business, right? And our industry it revolves around creating valuable RMR. I'm going to go off a little bit of a tangent, so just shut me down if you have to.
No, you're good.
Why is that valuable? Well, in a down economy when nobody's spending money, those customers you have send you a check every month or every quarter to watch over their home and make sure they're safe. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Why is that tied into a technician? I agree. It's always going to be a balancing act between production and skills, and you're looking for the middle. Over the lifetime of a customer, I mean, the average in our industry is 8 years. If I paid a tech an extra hour or two on the project because they were a little bit chatty, but the customers loved them, what do you think that does to the attrition rate of those customers, right? At the end of the day, if I've got a tech that puts in 25 systems a day, little hyperbole here,
I'd like
what's
to meet that guy.
if those customers aren't happy, if he leaves their home and they're not happy and they're not satisfied, that they don't feel like they got the value for the investment, what's the chance that customer can be poached when they're off contract in a couple of years by the new snazzy next thing? We don't have the money to market at the big, the super companies, right? They need tens of millions of dollars to market. Your customers get that marketing all the time. Your customers stick with you because the value, you're a trusted partner. I think that's the piece you have to keep in mind when you're picking your employees. And I know I'm a little bit off tangent because you want the balance and it's difficult, but I pay the extra hour because over the lifetime value of that customer, it's negligible.
Well, and the other piece of this is it's not even just the attrition, lowering the attrition, increasing the stickiness of that subscriber. But what was also amazing, I go back to this example of this tech that I'm thinking of from, when I was a kid. He actually got lots of referrals. It wasn't just that his customers were happy. This was also a tech who prided himself in the number of times customers referred people to the company because of him. And so, that's the other thing as we're tracking techs and, we're shooting for high standards of professionalism and high standards for productivity, right? Because we do need them to install the systems, but measuring those qualitative aspects of a technician, right? Not just the things that you can put a clear, start and stop time clock on, but hey, what are these things that we can look at to assess technicians in terms of, satisfaction with a customer, in terms of referrals, in terms of, these 5-star reviews that you're getting. I think that's really something that it's funny. I actually, we're always talking about people getting reviews. And last month I was like, you know what, guys, we don't have very many reviews on Google. And it's silly, but it was one of those things where I just felt like such a hypocrite because I'm like, man, here I am telling people to ask for reviews and we've got no reviews. We had some, but people generally don't leave reviews for their distributor on Google. Like, I don't know. At least that's what I told myself. And I made a mistake. I told my salespeople, I said, hey, I'm going to give you $20 for every review, 5-star review that you get between now and the end of the month. And once you know, these guys have to work and they got like 100 5-star reviews from customers. I wasn't sure if they were splitting the $20 with them or what, but I'm like, man, that's $2,000. I guess I got to put towards the marketing budget this month. But I say that to say the salesperson that got the most positive reviews wasn't the salesperson with the absolute best performance in terms of numbers for the month. And in sales, sales is generally judged by, hey, what's the number, right? Hey, what's your number? But that intangible, as John talks about the lifetime value of a customer, the value of having a customer come back repeatedly, that particular salesperson may not be as good at onboarding new accounts. But man, if his customers don't love him, if his customers aren't going to stick with him and with us long term because of the service that he provides, it's just a side note, a bit of a tangent, but you really have to look at those types of things because sometimes the numbers don't tell you the full story. Sometimes the KPIs that you're tracking don't tell you the full story. So I do want to call on Eric Brown. Eric Brown says quality takes time. Eric, speak to us about that.
I've done a lot of subcontracting work for national companies, and most of their motivation for their subcontractors get in, get out, and their salespeople are saying, "Oh, installation of a whole system in an hour." If you're doing a quality job, it's generally not going to happen in an hour, and you're not going to have a educated customer that knows how to use the system.
As you kind of compare the expectations with those national companies that, have you do sub work versus, the installations that you do for yourself, how would you say that you really like, is there a standard? You talk about training the customer. What is your expectation for a tech leaving a job? Do you set aside and allocate time for that training?
Yeah, and I usually plan on at least half an hour for training the customer and making them aware of what their system can do now and what their system could do down the road if they want to add things on. My experience is most times sales are just going for that initial sale, and they're not making people aware of everything that this new box in their home could do.
AJ talked about putting equipment out on a blanket, all the equipment that you're going to install. I don't remember the company, so I'm sorry I can't give credit to them for this. It was more than one, but they're technicians. I'm going back to this because of your mention about, educating the customer on all the other products that they could have on their system. This particular company had been very successful at laying out not just the equipment that they were installing, but they would actually lay out other products that could be added to the system. And so they would show the customer, and every single time they would take the customer through and they would say, "Hey, here are the things that we are going to be installing for you today. I'm going to show you all these things here. And then also want to let you know, I brought these things in. I had them on the truck, and I just want you to know that they're here, because what I don't want to have happen is I don't want you 3 days from now to get an email from our office telling you about this thing, and you say, gosh, I wish they would have told me about that to begin with," right? And so they show them the floodlight camera. They show them the video doorbell that maybe they didn't have installed. They show them the smart locks. They show them the thermostat, right? And all of a sudden, and they leave it there. Customer doesn't have to make a decision. I'm just going to leave this here. You take a look at it. I'm happy to go through any questions. And it was like wild how many times they were upselling all of these devices. There's a company that was so good at this. And actually, one of my guys used to work for them. And the salesperson would sell a traditional security sensor for the windows. And the tech, when he was there, would say, "Hey, look, we're gonna put these sensors all around the house. This is what we're gonna do. I also wanted to let you know we had these. I have these on the truck, and they were shock sensors, door window contacts with shock sensors built in." And they'd say, "Hey, look, I want to show you how this one is gonna work. The one that they've got in your package here. If somebody opens this window, it's gonna set the alarm off. I happen to have these other ones on the truck that if somebody smashes your window, this thing will go off, even if they don't open it." Did you have a preference? Were you cool with the ones that they had originally quoted, or did you want to have the ones that if they break the window, that'll work too? And on average, I may get this number wrong, but I want to say on average, that company had a $1,400 average upsell at the time of the installation, just because the technician educated the customer on this other particular product. Not a hard sell. The system's already sold. Just, hey, this is something else we have. Gage, do you want to throw something in on that?
In previous roles, and certain companies are different, but I would always encourage any of the technicians that were on the commercial side of things to literally always try to do that, because a lot of the time on the commercial side, I can drive more RMR doing that too. So as a sales rep, I would, and it was okay. I spoke with management about it. Anytime that they would upsell those types of things, I would literally cut them the commission I made off of that, because I was also getting commission on the RMR on it too. And it made my customers a lot happier. And I got a lot of return customers because of that. And those technicians always ended up getting requested if possible. Like, hey, I want them on my next job too. And it drives a lot for sure.
Good point. I wanted to call out, Sarah, in the comments, she says, "Be prepared to pay for the results you want. Pay technicians a bonus when they upsell parts." Such a good point. I want to say, though, there are technicians on your team that if you tell them you want them to upsell, they're going to lose their minds. I mean, it's wild to me. I'm a tech. It's not my job to sell. It's just my job to install. I personally disagree with that, right? Like strongly disagree with the idea that anybody in your company is not a salesperson. I think that everybody on your team that has any interaction with a customer should be prepared at least to soft sell, to educate, to give people options. But for those folks that are awesome technicians and totally freaked out by the idea of selling, laying out products, just showing what's available, or to Gage's point, having the salesperson go to the job at the time of the installation totally changes the game. You don't have to have technicians that are rock star salespeople. It's great when you do. Hold on to them. They're unicorns. They're amazing. Like pay them accordingly. But if you don't have technicians that are really great salespeople, at least make sure that your salespeople go to those jobs. I can tell you it's just a no-brainer. Just salesperson says, I'm here to make sure everything goes well. Here to make sure the tech understands all my notes. I'm going to go through, go around and sweep up a little bit, help out, just be there. Makes an incredible impression. I'm going to go to Tina real quick. Tina, and then we're going to jump to collecting feedback post-install and ensuring quality. But Tina, talk to us real quick about how you set your technicians apart in the field.
So we're a local company here in the Boston area. Our techs are it's the face of the company. So for us, it's to ensure that we have professional, like they're all professional, everything hit on the presentation and just knowledgeable, and that having those soft skills to deal with the customer. So in ours, it's a matter of like we take feedback. Like we are legit as I'm talking to you. Our team is all here, either fielding calls, managing customers, managing any issues, so that we can make sure we can prioritize our service and and just assign the right tech to that job. And the reality is, like, some techs have more experience in some areas than others, right? It could be computing, could be the actual install, but it really is a matter of and it's really hitting because I'm new-ish to this industry. I started with the company in just January. First thing, I just want to say thank you for keeping me letting me in the club, because I'm just learning so much. But it's just everything hits, right? Like you have to have that like from start to finish, and your sales team and techs lockstep. I threw out like a sales enablement program. I think John kind of spoke to that, but just like making sure that we're all aligned, right? So it's like the right content at the right time, making sure everybody has up-to-date information, making sure the techs are up to date on new releases, changes in the interface, anything of that, so that all that value that we can pass on back to our customers to really live up to our standards, which is we are your trusted security provider. And we've been in business for well over 30 years. But it's like you can say those words and you can post those words, but you have to act on it. And we do, like, I mean, I've been resurrecting all our Google reviews and stuff. Unfortunately, we're in a good spot, but we know that can change in a moment, right? One bad review can really take you down. So we want to make sure we're proactive and getting ahead of any issues that might arise, right? Post install. But I do love your point on salesperson or should be on site for that install. Huge, like
Yeah.
huge.
Thank you so much, Tina, and thank you for joining us here. And Tina talks about alignment. She mentioned alignment, and I think this is something that's so important. Getting everybody aligned, understanding what the priorities are, because you have a technician who has a scope of work in the morning and parts list, right? You have a scheduler who has scheduled jobs for the day, right? The technician's priority is to professionally install that system in a timely manner, right? And to educate the customer on it. The scheduler's job is to make sure that your jobs are going according to the schedule, right? That people are able to go and do the installs on time, that your customers aren't waiting there like it's the cable company for hours after the install or the scheduled install window. Your salesperson is aligned with the company here, I think most aligned, in that the salesperson's goal is to maximize revenue. And so you really run the risk without setting priorities and getting the alignment that you could have dysfunction in that, hey, we're all here talking about how great would it be if we upsell products at the time of the install, right? Well, now your scheduler's flipping out because we got 2 extra hours added to this job, right? Your technician's frustrated because he's having to work late on a Thursday, and you know that on Thursdays, he's got to get home to pick up his daughter from whatever extracurricular it is, and every Thursday, Thursdays are his day to get off on time, right? But now you got this sales guy there that's done a phenomenal job of upselling, right? And so what I would my point in all this is having that alignment and having that plan from the start. So if you know, hey, we've got a salesperson that's going to go out there and rocket upsell stuff, let's schedule that job early. Let's not schedule another job after it. Like, we know this is an opportunity for us to upsell. We know that this is probably going to happen. So let's not assign the technician that has to be home by 4 p.m. on Thursdays to that job, because we know that it may end up being a little bit later. Now, all of this to be said, we also talk about collecting feedback from the customer, right? We've done a great job selling stuff. We've done a great job installing. We put out blankets. AJ's got 15 blankets across the house. Everything is covered, all right? And they're vacuuming everything out. We've upsold a bunch of stuff. Your sales rep at SS&Si is very happy because you're always buying more and more equipment because your guys are so good at selling this stuff. But how do you collect the feedback, right? How do you get the voice of the customer? How do you adjust in real time? And we're going to go through this rapid fire. So if anybody's got for me their process for collecting feedback post-install, go ahead and raise your hand for me. This is a post-install survey, quality check. I'm going to jump real quick to Chuck. Chuck, tell me real quick, post-install quality check, what do you guys do?
Email. Send an email out.
Email, okay. And what is your expectation on percentage of folks that are going to respond to that?
We're probably in that 60 to 70% range if there's an email in there.
And what's acceptable feedback? What kind of feedback are you looking for on it?
Net promoter score, that they're willing to promote us.
Guys, this is a whole topic of conversation here. We're gonna do it super fast. Net promoter score. Look up NPI if you're not familiar with it. The concept is 1 through 10. How would you rate us? 9 and 10 is, I may have this wrong, but I think I got it right. 9 and 10 is positive. Anything other between 9 and, I don't know what it is. Would neutral? Gentlemen, do you know this? Do you know the NPI? I'm struggling here, but it's like a quick way to understand whether your customers are happy or unhappy.
Yeah.
Look it up. Do you know?
Go ahead. 1 through 6 are detractors. 7, 8s are kind of just neutrals, and 9s and 10s are promoters.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Thank you for breaking that down. Guys, the most important thing is to understand quickly whether your customer is happy with you. And then the next most important thing is how you respond to it. So Chuck, what happens when you get a neutral or negative? What's your process for reaching out to the customer?
Call them, email them, find out what's going on, see what we could do better, fix it if we need to. Oftentimes it's some sort of, minor issue or some sort of miscommunication between sales and tech, or how it was installed and how you use it. I think sometimes it's more, you're in a brand new house and all of a sudden you've got dishwashers to learn, you got dryers to figure out, you got all this stuff to figure out. New home blues.
Yeah.
So I think they get overwhelmed.
I have been in my house for 6 years. I think I mentioned this on another call. I've been in my house for 6 years. Just recently realized that my hot water and cold water on my washing machine are reversed. So new home blues and just, all the things you don't think about when you move into a place. Wondering why my laundry was weird all this time. Now starting to understand. Haven't fixed it, but reversed my settings in the washing machine so I don't have to fix it.
We do a yearly survey too. So, and we'll call everybody on that survey if they have negative comments. We'll call them for positive comments and use it for our promotionals.
So I want to speak to this really quickly. If you're not tracking feedback from customers in this way, I encourage you to do it. I've learned that the worst problem is a problem I don't know about. It's an upset customer. It's something that got screwed up. We messed up shipping something to AJ, and AJ was upset, but he didn't call me. He didn't email me. Instead, he just took all his business to ADI, right? That is the worst possible outcome for us as business owners, is to have an upset customer and not have an opportunity, number one, to fix it with that customer, and number two, to prevent it from happening again with another customer, because that business will shift. You'll lose it. It'll go to your competitors, and you don't have somebody out there that's recommending you. I always say that you want customers that stay, pay, and refer you to other people. The way that you do that is that you're professional from the start, from the sales presentation to the installation to post installation, collecting feedback and serving the customer. I think we could dig into feedback and adjusting way more than this, but I try to keep this call to an hour. I want to thank everybody that jumped on. We have this call every Friday at 11 a.m. I hope that you'll join us again next week. If there's any questions or challenges or things that we could bring up on the call, feel free to email it to me. If you do business with us today, I want to thank you for that. If we don't yet have the opportunity to work with you, I invite you to reach out to me. I would love to connect with you to see how we can support your business. But whether you do business with us or not, you're always welcome on this call. So feel free to join anytime. And please, please, please feel free to chime in. If you need help with something, let me know. Even if you don't feel comfortable on the call bringing it up, send me a note. I'll bring it up on the call and we can hash it out. So again, thanks so much, guys. I hope to see you again next week at 11. Have a great weekend.